Okay, we're back with some more stats. So this stat today, I'm very excited about it because it's actually a part of the game that in the game people are not so excited about, but I think it's very informative when we look at the stat itself, not necessarily at the action that is related to the stat, but the actual, stats for each of the teams. So we've now finished the pools, so I've updated my stats to include the 8 games that happened at the weekend. So now there's 40 games in our, stats database that we're working from. And, we've done scrum percentage, we've done average meters run per game. Now we're going to do a total. So the one we're looking at today is going to be kicking. So we're going to look at total kick meters. So this is from kicks from hand. So it could be a kick in play or a kick to touch. And, there's no judgment on whether the kicking was good or bad. It's just how many meters, those kicks went and in total for the teams. So there are a lot of surprises in here. I think there are a lot of teams that we think don't kick the ball very often and like to pass the ball around who have gone deep into my kicking World Cup, and there's teams that everybody thinks kicks the leather off the ball that didn't even come close to getting out of their pool. So let's have a look first at the quarterfinals. So quarterfinal number 1, the loser of that one was Japan, and they kicked 2,686 meters coming out of Pool D, but they weren't able to, beat the team that they faced in their quarterfinals. Next time we have Ireland with 3,038. So coming out of Pool B. So Ireland, we know that they have a good kicking strategy, and, they like to kind of kick to retain the ball as well, rather than other teams will kick a little bit more to, try to advance up the field more, so they'll kick deeper. So Ireland, they're not the top kickers in the World Cup, but they're certainly not the least either. Into quarterfinal 3, then we have England with 3,559, and we see England kick a lot, but their strategy is box kicks. They do go for 50-22s and they do go for long kicks as well. We've seen some kicking battles certainly in England games, and 500 more meters than Ireland kicked by them as well. But this one, it's I guess for a lot of people probably not that surprising really to see England there. And then in the final quarterfinal, then we have Scotland on 2,929 meters coming out of Pool B. So Scotland not that far behind Ireland with their kicking, and it's something that when we looked at the Six Nations stats as well, that Scotland were up there as well near the top, and I think they actually had more kick meters than Ireland in the Six Nations. And again, Scotland are a team that we know they like to throw the ball around, but they also kick, and they have some really good kickers on their team as well. They got Blair Kinghorn there. They've got Finn Russell. The centers, Jones and Tupolatu, sometimes will put in some kicks as well. And Van der Merwe doesn't really kick all that much, but the likes of Stain when he plays, or Darcy Graham, they will kick too. And then obviously you've got box kicks from 9 as well. So they've got plenty of decent kickers in their team, and it's not really surprising, that if they have that strength, they're actually going to use it. So those are the teams that made the quarterfinals but advanced no further. On to the semi-finals then. Semi-final number 1, the loser of that was actually New Zealand on 3,529. So another team that we think, doesn't really kick all that often and likes to instead kind of, counter-attack the ball when it's kicked to them, and to also, play with ball in hand when they just have it from set piece or wherever. But no, they actually do kick a lot, and it's fairly effective for them as well. Like they won a lot of the games fairly handily, apart from obviously the first one against France, but still, a team that is not afraid to kick the ball and to put pressure on the opposition by having to play more in their territory than in New Zealand's. Next, in the other semi-final then, we have Wales on 4,022. So the first of the teams to actually break the 4,000 mark so far of the ones that we looked at. And, Wales, we didn't really have an idea really of how they're going to play in this Rugby World Cup. Obviously, you know how Gatland had his team playing previously when he was coached before, but the Six Nations and the warm-ups didn't really tell us anything about them because they were still trying to get combinations working. There was a lot of chopping and changing in their team, but through this World Cup, we're seeing that they have been kicking a lot. They've been competing in the air. They got the likes of Reece Samet there, who's just lightning fast, who can get there and pressurize the receiver of the kicks as well. So there's no surprise really that they're kicking long. But 4,000 meters wasn't enough for them to make the final. So let's have a look at the two finalists. Losing finalists, a team that traditionally everybody thinks of being a very attacking team that throws the ball around, but in this Rugby World Cup at least they absolutely kicked the ball a lot, and that's Australia on 4,060 meters. So Australia under Eddie Jones at least kicking a lot and kicking long too, and they've got the likes of Carter Gordon when he was playing and didn't get dropped out of nowhere. And then you had Nwaka Nitawase on the wing. He liked to kick, and then he was really good, even whether he's kicking or somebody else is kicking, getting you up there and competing as well. You had Kellaway there at fullback too, and then what was the name of the guy that they dropped Gordon for? His name's gone out of my head, but the guy who basically was playing fullback and then they moved him to 10, his name's going to come to me probably before the end of the video, or actually just after the end of the video, but you probably know who I'm talking about. But yeah, they kicked a lot, but still not enough to be the kicking champions so far of this Rugby World Cup. And the kicking champions are the home side, France, with 4,309 meters kicked. We saw again the Six Nations. They were, I think, the only team that kicked more than Scotland in the Six Nations. Trend has continued in this Rugby World Cup. They're kicking the most of any team in the Rugby World Cup. 250 pretty much meters more than the second most team. And again, France are a team, we see them some lovely moves where they're running the ball as well, but a lot of kicking. You got Dupont there, you have Ramos at fullback, and then if you've got the likes of Jaminet, etc., when they're on too, and just a lot of players who can kick the ball. And then when you've got Bielri, Villiers and Pinot on the wings as well, they're up there chasing those kicks as well, and you can see why they use a strategy, because those guys are so good at putting that pressure on. And yeah, so France, the top kickers in this Rugby World Cup so far, and I expect that trend to continue as well. So when it's going to be interesting as well when we look at the teams don't kick that much, when you look at who's playing who in the quarterfinals as well. So let's actually look at the pools and how they come out in terms of kicking. So Pool A, you got France there, top 4,309. New Zealand second, 3,529. Namibia, 2,623. Italy, 2,550. Italy, one team I'd say absolutely need to develop a kicking strategy and kick more, because so much time in their own 22 throwing the ball around, and mistakes are inevitable, and they concede tries off them and just make life harder for themselves. You got Uruguay at the bottom there with 2,073, another team that really like to keep the ball alive too. On to Pool B then. Got Ireland on the top with 3,038. Scotland second with 2,200. 2,929, sorry. Romania next, 2,753. Tonga, 2,151. South Africa, the team that everybody kind of thinks is a kicking team with only 2,010 meters, like bottom of their pool. So like again, the image we have of teams in our head when it comes around to kicking is just completely wrong and completely skewed. But still, even I've seen these stats before in terms of the Six Nations as well. So I knew from the Six Nations which teams kicked the most and which teams, deny the kicks and try to run the ball instead. But still, when I'm watching games, it doesn't come across to me. It doesn't come across to me that Scotland kick a lot, or Ireland kick a lot, or France kick a lot, or New Zealand kick a lot. Because when I watch the game, I guess the bits that stick out to me are the bits when they run the ball, which are, compared to the kicking, not as often, but still they're the bits that stay with you. On to Pool C then. You got Australia at the top there with 4,060. Wales not far behind, 4,022. Georgia next on 3,935. Portugal with 3,710. And Fiji there with 2,879. So Fiji, a low amount of kicking for that pool, but if you look at that pool in terms of kicking, this was the kicking pool, which is weird to think about it, because you got like Portugal, who were throwing the ball around, Fiji, who love to throw the ball around, Australia traditionally would throw the ball around, Wales traditionally, not under Gatland though, but traditionally Wales, you think of them as a team that throw the ball around, and Georgia, who've been trying to throw the ball around as well, but apparently they all just like to kick instead. But on to Pool D then, England with 3,559, Japan 2,686, Argentina 2,645, so almost level with Japan. Samoa 2,399, and Chile just 1,623, so easily the lowest kicking total in the entire tournament. And that's probably why they felt so different to the other teams, because they were throwing the ball around all the time, running it and passing it, and very rarely kicking it. I think a lot of the kicks are actually when they were up near the opposition and trying kicks over the top, or kicks grubbers through and stuff like that, in terms of total kicks. But in terms of obviously meterage, probably still coming from penalties to touch and clearing kicks and stuff like that. But I thought it was very interesting. We're going to look now at the top 5 kicking performances and the bottom 5 kicking performance, again only in terms of the meters gained, or the meters made, I guess, from those kicks, rather than whether it was a good performance or not. So the team that kicked most in a single game was France versus New Zealand with 1,747. That's just a crazy number of meters. Like, France kicked more meters in that one game than Chile kicked in the entire tournament. So by the end of the first game, the opening game of the tournament, France got more kick meters than Chile were going to get in the entire tournament. So the 4 games, France kicked that more than that in one game. Next then we have Wales with 1,579 meters against Georgia, and then Australia with 1,535 meters also against Georgia. Then New Zealand versus France, 1,312 meters. So between them, France and New Zealand in that game, they kicked 3,059 meters between them in that one game. So in that one game, between them, they kicked more meters than almost like all bar maybe 6 teams in the entire tournament, including themselves. Like, that's just crazy for the amount of meters that they kicked there. There's so many teams who didn't break 3,000 over the entire tournament, and Ireland just about broke it, but they were still less than them. So, crazy thing because when you think back to that game, you don't think kicking, and you don't think that it was, because people always say, oh, kicking is boring, but that was a good game. And apparently it was a good game with 3,059 meters kicked in it as well. Then the last one we have is Georgia versus Australia with 1,221. So that game as well, it was 2,756 meters between Australia and Georgia kicked in that game. Again, more than a lot of teams kicked in the entire tournament. The 5 least, kicking performances. So the team that kicked the least in any single game was Uruguay versus New Zealand. They only kicked 253 meters. Then Uruguay versus France, 272 meters. South Africa versus Tonga, just 317 meters. Chile versus Argentina, just 347 meters. And Namibia versus New Zealand, 358 meters. So you can see the huge contrast there. Like the bottom one, 2,053 meters. So France basically kicked 7 times pretty much 7 times as many meters as Uruguay did against the same opposition. So again, it's, for me at least, some of these stats are a little bit mind-blowing when you look at it, because again, what we see or we perceive is just so different to what the stats actually tell us. And sometimes, stats, can kind of almost lie a little bit, but kicking stats in this case certainly don't lie. But, I found this interesting. I hope you did. And, these videos, I like making them. I want to make more of them. They do take time to put together because you have to collate all the stats. But because of that, I would love if you could, hit that like button, post a comment, etc., just to help the algorithm. And I very rarely ask this, but I would love if you would share this video with someone who you think would enjoy it too.